Tops off, fucking faded. Sun's blazing, so I've been getting lazy lately. These hard days, nights got me racing around, chasing ladies, gambling and getting crazy like fuck you pay me. Drunk season, I'm drinking for no reason, sleeping in like it's the weekend, less thinking, more speeding, yeah. Life in that lane, carpe diem, party from AM to PM. Every evening we're banking on freedom. Get those cans cracking and let some living happen. I'm getting active, I can and I will be smacking some asses. Getting smashed, inebriated with passion. Fashion and fornication mixed with liquor, classic. Yeah, I'm from the other side. Yeah, I'm from the other side, yeah. I got nothing to hide. I got nothing to hide. I get high, get late, get by, get away. I live a life trying to find my way, yeah. I'ma die one day, yeah. So I'ma die my way. Get high, get late, get by, get away. I live a life trying to find my way, yeah. I'ma die one day, yeah. So I'ma die my way. Now this is some American shit. We wanna dare to resist the urge to party. We're American kids, yeah. Speakers blaring in the whip, incoherent without a care in this bitch. Like, come on, let's go share this drink. Pouring hops like it's patriotic, ignoring.
In a majority, even though, Europe annoys them, they don't want to leave the EU. And if she pushes
that he's an outsider.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, obviously he is part of it. He comes from the Hollande administration, and even if he was a banker before, where he can appeal to the business people, he is the institution and he is the representation. One of the things I think is interesting to look at is what's happening on social media, because in the end of the day, a lot of this mobilization that we saw for Mélenchon and for Marine Le Pen also came from the younger people. So what I did is I plugged in deeply into what was happening with some help, some analysis on a company called Brandwatch, looking at what the younger people doing and how engaged were they with what was being said. So Mélenchon and Le Pen had far greater, not only larger audiences, but far greater engaged audiences prepared to retweet to their people, their followers, which is a signal of engagement. And whereas Macron, on the list of all the criteria that we used, is not number one in any of them. So he has half the followers on Twitter and a much lower type of engagement because he's what? So right now he's not Le Pen, and we're again going to be voting for not somebody. And I think that the issue we've had in the round of 11 is that I'm not going to vote for them. I'm not going to vote. I like a little bit of this, but you have to be a little bit more strategic about, as Eric Zemmour said, about how you're going to vote. It's not like I love this person. It's, a little bit of that, a little bit of that, and mostly not that. And that's what we're going to end up with in round two.
Angela, what's interesting is the fact that we've seen Emmanuel Macron really try to distance himself. And we've seen attempts in the past. Centrist candidate, François Bayrou, for instance, was a centrist candidate. He got 18%, if I remember correctly, in 2007. But there we have really this totally new experiment. Yes, everyone is criticizing him, but if there's no major accident, he's France's next president.
Yes, the sums would suggest that, because there are only the 19% there for François Fillon, the mainstream right-wing candidate. That is pretty much all Marine Le Pen can pick up in terms of votes, and that is not going to be enough.
And it's likely Fillon will probably also go on to support Macron.
Exactly, and many of those, most of those, the huge majority of those will go to Macron. So it looks as though it looks unlikely that she will win.
Will she be able to, in one way, it's also her own weakness, but will she be able to perhaps once again go at the fact that how will he go about governing in terms of parliamentary vote? Well, that's a weakness for him, but also
the problem is it's a weakness for her as well. Neither of them have a party behind them. Neither of them can count on a majority. He at least might be able to get together some sort of governing coalition. It's very unlikely she will. No party is going to support her. And so that is going to be a major weakness for her, the fact that she does not have a parliamentary majority. So whatever she represents might well not come into being, in the same way as we've seen Donald Trump say, I will do this, this and this. At the end of the day, he needed Congress behind him. At the end of the day, she will need the French National Assembly behind her. And it doesn't look like that will happen.
Right. What's incredible is that Emmanuel Macron, if I asked you today, can you tell me who's going to be his prime minister if he wins?
Nobody knows.
Okay.
Nobody asked the questions. And it's,
No, but,
you deal with François.
This was not on voters' mind today, it seems,
No,
or at least not enough to
because
eliminate him.
He's the guy. I mean, there's only him. So, a lot of people around, and a lot of intelligence around, and as we see the ground movement, he had a lot of American method in there. But if you look at the team. The politicians around him. I mean, you have Jean-Yves Le Drian, who is an old PS guy. You have
former
François
defense
Bayrou.
minister.
Yes, former defense minister. So you say, who's going to be the guy fighting to be prime minister if he wins, and he should win? And what's going to happen with François Bayrou was the first to make the move, and if he doesn't get a job or if he doesn't get what he wants, will the coalition last long enough for things to happen? That's the key question. And I think Marine Le Pen, even if she doesn't win, she won a big part of what is the French right tonight, and it's a sad news, but it's true. And I think Front National will change in the future even further and open more to the Villieristes and other currents that were with François Fillon so far, but that might decide to join Marine Le Pen, depending on what she's going to say in the coming 2 weeks, and after that for the legislative elections.
One moment, just a reminder now for our viewers, if you're just tuning in now, it's about 8:30 here in the French capital, and we do indeed have a clear picture for France's future. We've got two candidates who have made it through to the second round, this based on estimates as polling stations have closed. Emmanuel Macron coming in first for the moment at 23.7%. Marine Le Pen and her National Front Party making it in at 21.7%. This ahead of both François Fillon and Jean-Luc Mélenchon. They both, for the moment, stand at roughly 19.5%. Once again, these figures will change slightly as the full results come in. We are going to cross now to Chris Moore, who is at the far left candidate rally there. Chris, I can imagine it was very close. What are people making of it there?
There's still a few people outside this venue near the Gare du Nord shouting Mélenchon for president and Résistance, resistance, one of his campaign battle cries. But there's devastation really here among the supporters, as you might expect. You've got to remember that a few weeks ago, Jean-Luc Mélenchon was polling at about 11 or 12%. In the end, he really swept aside his left-wing rival, Benoît Hamon, the Socialist Party. And as you were seeing those figures there, got to within 2 or 3% of the front runners. You have to remember too that Emmanuel Macron, most of Jean-Luc Mélenchon's fans, all of them in fact, are no fan of Emmanuel Macron. They see him as somebody who's far too close to big business, to international finance, to the European Union in its current form. Jean-Luc Mélenchon and Marine Le Pen, on the other hand, do share some views on the need to reform Europe, on putting out of NATO, etc. But in terms of issues of identity, inclusiveness here in France, they come from very, very, very different places. And some of those Mélenchon supporters outside that they will, saying that they will, with a heavy heart, saying that they will go out and vote for Emmanuel Macron to block Marine Le Pen's path. But others saying that they simply can't bring themselves to do that. It'll be interesting to see what Jean-Luc Mélenchon himself has to say about it.
Indeed, Chris, do you have any indication as to when we can expect to hear from him?
We're expecting to hear from him in the coming minutes. He's obviously a very, very disappointed man. It was always going to be very difficult for him on the left. What we've seen in this election process really is kind of four major blocks emerging. To the left of Emmanuel Macron, there were always those two candidates in there, Benoît Hamon and Jean-Luc Mélenchon. There was talk earlier on in the campaign of a potential alliance. In the end, that didn't come about. Mélenchon actually did very well to get as far as he did towards those other contenders. I've been out following the Mélenchon campaign in recent weeks, and that particular conundrum was one which came across a lot on internal policy, social policy, particularly within France. Those two candidates have quite a lot in common, but when it comes to what they want for France's relationship with its overseas partners, Mélenchon is much more radical. And did see people coming to those rallies trying to work out how scary they found Mélenchon. Frankly, in the end, he won the argument on the left. Had there been an alliance, they could have emerged as the biggest bloc, but Benoît Hamon, with his 6.5% or so, has prevented that from happening.
Thank you, Chris Moore. It will be interesting indeed to hear from Jean-Luc Mélenchon what message he will deliver to his voters. Nearly 20% of the votes for round two. Will he support Emmanuel Macron? That's what's supposed to happen, but we will see. see what he has to say. Obviously, the big loser on the left is Benoît Hamon, the socialist candidate. He was triumphant in a Socialist Party primary just a few weeks ago, but clearly this campaign did not unfold the way he hoped it would. He was tied with Jean-Luc Mélenchon a couple of weeks ago, but he collapsed. Jean-Luc Mélenchon took advantage, and now there'll be lots of soul searching in the Socialist Party. Let's go to Luc Schwego, who's following the evening. I imagine people did not expect much, but must be even more depressed now with a score of around 6%.
When those results came out, there was an audible gasp that ran through the room. I think few people were under any illusions here that Benoît Hamon would not be moving through to the second round. However, I don't think anyone expected him to do this badly. You may just be able to make out behind me, there are almost as many journalists in the room now as actual supporters. A lot of them left fairly quickly. Now, you heard earlier the tail end of Hamon's concession speech there. What you may not have heard was what he said at the beginning. Now, this even he himself was under no impression that he may be moving through. He said that he had failed to overcome the disaster that he had been approaching for months, though he was proud of the campaign he had run. He did go on, of course, to say that the left is not dead. It shows that there are still some of those people out there who are willing to support the Socialist Party. However, it seems it's just not enough. His campaign lost momentum right the way through, and he never really was able to regain it again. He was looking to come out with what you could describe as a respectable loss. That would have been at least over 10%. He was really hoping to regain some of his voters and support from the far left who would have gone to Jean-Luc Mélenchon. Now that, it seems, hasn't happened, and it's not just an embarrassment for the Socialist Party, it's an outright disaster. This kind of result has basically been an absolute refutation and rejection of Socialist Party policies. The campaign, of course, he wanted to fight it on the basis of ideas. He's come up with so many campaign policies that were majorly forward-looking, but he just hasn't been able to motivate people to vote for him. The campaign was truly fought on the basis of personalities, and of course with the left wing split as it was, and of course the high-profile defections that we saw, the Manuel Valls and of course Defense Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian supporting Macron coming out, and for him it was just too much to overcome.
Indeed. All right, Luc, thank you very much for that. Now let's take a listen again to Benoît Hamon, who we heard speak just moments ago.
The elimination of the left by the far right for the second time in 15 years is not only a heavy electoral defeat, it signifies a moral defeat for the country and for the left in particular. The entire left wing must hear your message tonight. Enough. Enough of the self-destructive madness that has let us forget those who have fought for the left throughout history, and also those for whom the left must fight every day.
Yes, and one of the reasons of this collapse and the historical defeat was the division of the Socialist Party. Even before this round, the former Socialist Prime Minister Manuel Valls had said that he would support Emmanuel Macron and not Benoît Hamon, and Manuel Valls just said on his Twitter account that he was calling on people to vote for Macron. Not a big surprise, Angela, but clearly this shows how divided the Socialist Party was. And maybe some people will say this is the legacy also not only of Manuel Valls, but of François Hollande.
Yes, all through François Hollande's presidency, people have said that his problem was that there were currents within the Socialist Party which were all pulling in different directions, and he was never prepared to say, this is what I stand for, this is where we're going. And he veered from left to right throughout his presidency. The French Socialist Party has never really done what, for example, to use Britain as an example, Tony Blair did in Britain, where he persuaded the party, vote after vote after vote, he persuaded the party to follow him in his direction, and he pulled the party to the right. Some people now regret that, some don't, but it was a long process of persuasion. That's never really happened in France. Each time it's resolved and not resolved by a public fight at a primary or over the leadership, and the actual issues are not voted on, and the direction, the soul of the party has never really been decided upon. And perhaps that will happen now. The problem for Hamon during this campaign was, there were two left-wing candidates, two far-left candidates, really. He appealed more to the young. Mélenchon, who is a formidable campaigner, terrific, flamboyant speaker, appealed to the slightly older voters on the far left. The thing that separated them mostly, again, was Europe. Mélenchon hates Europe. Benoît Hamon very much in favour of Europe. But apart from that, it was quite difficult to explain to people why one was hard left and the other was far left. They seem very similar. It's a generational thing in many senses.
And indeed, and for many people, though, after we saw the debates, and that's really where very much we saw the curve in terms of the polls and support just grow after Mélenchon's performances there. And he started to win over then young voters, even though you say it's generational. And that was the surprise. And also considering really who was helping and running his campaign. We saw he actually had some very innovative initiatives there.
The holograms and so on. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, there's an element of non-surprise, I would say, at this point, compared to the type of surprises we were expecting. So I think we've sort of stabilized a little bit, and it's not quite as dramatic for me as one might have expected, at least as we go into the run-up to it.
When we see the results as of now, once again, they are not the final results, just the estimates. But what do you think then was on voters' minds? This, as of course, much concern had been security. We are indeed actually going to cross to François Fillon, who is speaking. Let's listen in.
I would like to thank all those who voted for me and have supported me for 4 years. I would like to express my recognition, my gratitude and friendship. I will never forget this. On the occasion of the legislative elections, they will have another opportunity to express the views of the right and the center. Don't disperse your votes. Remain united, remain determined. Your force will count. France needs you. Pending this event, we have to choose what is preferable for our country in the next round. I am not going to make any recommendation lightly. I do not believe in abstention, especially when an extremist party is close to power. The National Front, created by Jean-Marie Le Pen, has a history of violence and intolerance. Its program, its economic and social program, would lead our country to failure, to bankruptcy. And to this chaos, we would have to add the European chaos with the exit from the Eurozone. Extremism cannot bring anything other than division to France. Therefore, there is no other choice than to vote against the extreme right. I shall therefore vote in favor of Emmanuel Macron. I believe that it is my duty to say so frankly to you, and now it's up to you in your conscience to reflect on what you think is the best for you, your country and your children. My dream for our children is that they should be able to live in a free, fraternal country that is proud of its values, a country that has got rid of the fear of decline, a country where all the promises of our Republican slogan can be realized. That was my ambition, my project, and my dream. This dream is with each of you. It's now up to you to fight and to get to the result that we want. The future of France is in your hands. I trust you, and at this moment I allow myself to say that I'm proud of being one. Long live France, long live the Republic.
We just heard a concession speech from the Conservative candidate François Fillon, who was for a long, long time the favorite to win that election, but who only arrived third or fourth according to our estimate, but in any case is out of the second round on May 7th. He warned that France was facing an extremist danger in the National Front, and he said there's no other choice than to vote for Emmanuel Macron. So we've heard already a number of politicians from his party call for a vote in favor of Emmanuel Macron. Now we have it from their candidate. He said there's no choice. He also added that there had been too many cruel, quote unquote, obstacles put before him. This is obviously a way of saying that he has been essentially hit by those scandals, and this probably doomed his chances to win this race. So obviously it's interesting to have immediately François Fillon making things clear. He didn't say to the voters, make up your mind when you go to the ballot box on May 7th. I want you to support Emmanuel Macron.
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to a point that Minter made that I think Macron has to be careful in terms of how he receives this support in order to try and distance himself from this growing image of being actually part of the establishment and so on. But no, I mean, it is quite clear that that Fillon backing Macron is it's quite strange actually in terms of his electorate. I mean, his electorate, the electorate that he actually went for.
He wouldn't call for support for Marine Le Pen.
No, he wouldn't. No, but he
said there's no choice.
No, of course not. But in my view, he made it sound too enthusiastic, his support.
No.
That he should have done. In the sense that his, I mean, some of the people that Fillon was appealing to were very close to Marine Le Pen in terms of, the way that they might want to vote in the next round or in the legislative elections. I think in terms of the question of that you put to me before we had to go to Fillon, in terms of, what are people hoping for here? What's going on? What's happening? I think that part of the background to this we have to remember is, well, not only the last 20, 25 years, but particularly the pretty catastrophic presidency of François Hollande in terms of its perceptions by the public. So that in a sense, it's interesting that the two candidates that emerge from the shipwreck of the Hollande presidency is the kind of optimistic Macron and the future, and the let's be en marche, let's go, and the kind of despairing, unhappy, left behind France that are so resentful, and in some ways justifiably so, who are so unhappy that they have gone for Marine Le Pen. And I think, in a sense, what we see here is a divided France that has to be addressed.
The have-nots.
Indeed, we're going to cross now to François Fillon's headquarters. This is where our James Creedon is standing by. James, it was not quite the evening that François Fillon had hoped for, was it?
Certainly not, Molly. In fact, it was a very calm atmosphere for the whole evening. I think people really, some were hoping that he would make it into the second round, and there was fear as well at a certain point that if he were not to make it in, that he could even come in fourth place. So the fact that he almost qualified for the second round is somewhat reassuring for some of the people here. But just now, when he gave his concession speech downstairs, there was very muted applause. I think it's the most kind of remarkable aspect of events here this evening so far. Very muted applause when Emmanuel Macron was endorsed. Remember that the Fillon campaign targeted Macron qualify for the second round. It will be at the expense of last few weeks, where there was an attempt to tie his reputation and his experience to François Hollande's mandate. Remember, François Hollande, of course, is, he's kind of going up in popularity stakes at the moment, but he has record unpopularity for a president in power. So to then see François Fillon turn around, and in the name, I suppose, of what they call here in France the Republican Pact, in other words, supporting the candidate who is standing against the National Front in the second round of elections, it didn't necessarily go down well with everyone here. Remember François Fillon's campaign, when he won the primary, he was positioned on the most traditional conservative end of the spectrum of Conservative Party candidates for the primary, and he won that primary on the basis of his appeal to traditionalists, to practicing Catholics, to the anti-gay marriage lobby, to pro-business, the pro-business community who wanted to see major austerity measures brought in, and the red tape of the French state done away with, or at least reduced radically. So that was his platform. It appealed to quite a traditional conservative base, and they're not necessarily jumping with joy to see François Fillon then endorse Emmanuel Macron. But of course, that was to be expected. François Fillon was, of course, going to give his support to Emmanuel Macron in the second round over Marine Le Pen. So a very muted, dead atmosphere here, really, to be honest. And what was most striking is that atmosphere was there all throughout the evening, and it didn't change when the results were announced. So I think people were anticipating that he would probably not qualify, despite some guarded optimism among some.
James Creedon, thank you very much. We are now going to cross to the Macron headquarters. François Fillon endorsed Emmanuel Macron, and Claire William is with a guest.
Yes, I'm with Virginie Sachs. Virginie Sachs actually set up her own business last year, but she put it on hold. For the last 6 months, she's been volunteering unpaid for Emmanuel Macron's En Marche movement. Virginie, tell me, why did you decide to stop working on your business and become a volunteer for En Marche?
So basically 2 reasons mainly. The first reason is really that I believe Emmanuel Macron's project is really what France needs. I like my country. I would like to just work for that objective and for that purpose. So this was really something that was really strong for me. So I really wanted to support that project. And I had my own business just starting. It was also something very important for me, but as an entrepreneur, I really needed Emmanuel Macron to really put in place what he has in his project for entrepreneurs, because it will help me really to be effective, really efficient, to have a strong business in the future. For example, Emmanuel Macron wants to free really energies and entrepreneurial mindsets by first giving you some protection just in case you fail. If you fail, it's not really a problem. You fail, you learn from the mistake.
So for young business owners, when they're just starting out, Emmanuel Macron would give them a second chance. If they make a mistake, he'd give them a second chance.
Exactly, and this is really very important because I decide to take risks. That's good, but if anything happens, I really need to know that I will have some support. This is really important. And in terms of structure, how I am supported by an administration that helps me out, Emmanuel Macron wants to simplify, make it more efficient, so that I can really focus on my business and not focus on getting the administration to work around me. So this is really efficient. I need that to be successful for my business.
So what would you have done if Emmanuel Macron had not got through to the second round tonight? What would be the next steps for you?
If he had failed for the second round, probably depends. It depends on who had been the candidate.
Would you have stayed in France? Would you have continued to run your business and open your business here in France?
This would have been a real question. Because I really think that depending on the candidate that goes through for the second round, business entrepreneurs and businessmen would have had a hard time. So this is a question that I still have, but if Emmanuel Macron is in charge, clearly I will set up my business in France, and I'm proud of doing that.
Right, that was Virginie Sachs, set up her own business last year. Has been volunteering for 6 months for Emmanuel Macron, unpaid. Clearly, she's very pleased tonight that he is going through to the second round of the presidential election here in France.
Claire, thank you very much for that. Claire Williams there at the En Marche rally. Of course, we are waiting to hear from Emmanuel Macron, who has come out on top of that, according to estimates. Let's actually bring up the look at the latest figures that we do have, because, of course, they are being updated throughout the night as vote tallying continues. So what we do have now is actually it, for the moment, remains the same for Emmanuel Macron. We've got Le Pen, who has inched up to 21.9. She was at 21.7. A little while earlier, that when the results came in at 8 o'clock here. Now, I'd like to just take a look, if we can, then also as we see François Fillon edging up as well at 19.7. Jean-Luc Mélenchon at 19.2, and actually Benoît Hamon has gone down a bit to 6.2. So it does indeed get worse for the Socialist Party. And one thing that's interesting is we heard from our Luc Schwego there at the Socialist headquarters, and he said there was an audible gasp when the actual figure came in for Benoît Hamon. That's very interesting because, of course, the last time we heard such an audible gasp was in 2002 when the National Front made it through to the second round.
And that's what he said. It's the second time in a row, well, not in a row, but second time in French history that the French left is kicked out of the table by the extreme right. So the question is, what happened in those 15 years? I know, and it was the work of François Hollande, and the legacy is that finally the Parti Socialiste will have to go into a reshuffle and see what's going to be the future of this. It's very terrible for, I mean, he made a campaign that was inaudible because Jean-Luc Mélenchon was there, because some subjects were very too advanced, like the universal revenue, and they couldn't be heard on being, getting serious and what are the problems that the people have at the moment.
Sorry, I have to interrupt you. Our Catherine Nicholson in Beaumont, the headquarters of the National Front tonight, is with a guest. Catherine?
Yes, Mark, I'm here with Jean Messia, who is the Presidential Project Coordinator for Marine Le Pen. Mr. Messia, thanks very much for speaking to us. What's your reaction to these initial estimations?
Well, a sensation of great joy, great happiness. This is a consecration of months, if not years, of hard working to try to work out a coherent presidential project in order to convince our fellow citizens that we have the solution for France, we have the solution for unemployment, and we have, all in all, the solution to make France great again.
Now, this 21.7% estimation that we've been given for Marine Le Pen, that is drastically lower than the estimates that she had been scoring in the polls just a matter of weeks ago. What do you think has made the difference there?
Well, it's not quite clear now what is the exact percentage. Some other polls are giving 23, but all in all, of course, there were all those debates with the 10 other candidates that spoke. And maybe this was also an opportunity for some small candidates to appear, like Nicolas Dupont-Aignan, who make a score of 5%, which is higher than expected. So this is very normal that at the end of the campaign, the margins are becoming thinner than initially expected.
And just to tell our viewers, we are expecting to hear from Marine Le Pen speaking on stage behind us in just a couple of minutes' time. But before we go to her, I wanted to ask you, Emmanuel Macron appears to be the person that Marine Le Pen will be facing in the second round. Now, he does have very broad appeal. He is a bit of an unknown quantity, his first run at the presidency. Many people predicting that a Macron-Le Pen second round means that Macron will win.
No, it's not that clear. I don't think that the electoral basis of François Fillon is convinced in the majority of the project of Emmanuel Macron. François Fillon gathered what we call the conservative Catholics electorate. I don't think this electorate will necessarily agree with all the societal issues that are carried by Emmanuel Macron. Besides what I spoke about Nicolas Dupont-Aignan, who is very, very close to our project. He's also a sovereignist. And all in all, there is a fracture between what the basis in France is convinced of and the vision that is carried by the political elites So even though the elites are calling for to vote for Emmanuel Macron, this is not a meaning that the basis will vote for him.
Now, we know that Emmanuel Macron is a very strongly pro-European candidate. Marine Le Pen is a very strongly anti-European candidate. Might we see this second round of the French presidential election as somewhat of a referendum on the European issue?
In a certain way, yes, but we have made it very clear that for us, a presidential election is a presidential election. There will be the time of a referendum if Marine Le Pen is a president of the Republic. There will be a referendum on the European issue, and finally it will be the people that will decide. Today, you know, Marine Le Pen is the only candidate to be in the wind of history. The world is changing. All this globalization around the borderless economy, market-driven economy, the feeling that the economy is everything, that political voluntarism is no more efficient, all this is closing on 2016 by the election of Donald Trump, by the coming of the Brexit, by the election of Modi in India. There is a new world which is shaping under our eyes, and I think the only one to be in adequation with this new world is Marine Le Pen.
And if we just have a brief word about where Marine Le Pen goes from here. Now, she has had many, many years to prepare for this presidential election after coming in third place in 2012. Emmanuel Macron, her second round likely contender, has only been a candidate for a matter of minutes in the world of political timescales. And yet he seems to be scoring ahead of her. Where do you think Marine Le Pen is going to take her campaigning and her message in light of this between now and the second round?
Because Emmanuel Macron epitomized all what we have been struggling against for years. He is the archetype of the system we are fighting. He is the man of the financial globalization. He is the man of massive immigration. He is the man of the no border. And I think all the French people, there are, you know, winners and losers of this model. And today, the losers are much more numerous than the winner. And as a political election is a matter also of arithmetics, once you said that the losers are more numerous than the winners, I think this could work out a victory for Marine Le Pen.
All right, so Jean Messia, Presidential Project Coordinator for Marine Le Pen, predicting Marine Le Pen victory in that second round in 2 weeks' time. Thank you very much for speaking to us here on France 24.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Catherine Nicholson. There you have a foretaste of what are going to be the arguments probably of Marine Le Pen as she will square off against Emmanuel Macron. There will be a debate between both candidates between the two rounds and then round two on May 7th. In the meantime, the man sitting in the Élysée Palace, François Hollande, apparently, well, not apparently, according to the Élysée Palace, called Emmanuel Macron to quote unquote congratulate him, but he will not speak tonight, but will make his mind known very, very clearly, quote unquote, again, very soon. So probably tomorrow is no big secret. We can all safely bet here that François Hollande will also back the man he brought into politics, Emmanuel Macron.
Indeed, and now just word that we are getting, of course, as this night is unfolding, and once again, just has to be said, it's these are not the final results, but just an update, a reminder. If you're just following in, we do have the two finalists that have made it through to round two, as we mentioned. It is indeed Emmanuel Macron at 23.7%, Marine Le Pen at 21.9%. And we do know that the economy and security were a major issue in this campaign. But what I'd like to ask actually to our new guest who's joined us here on set, Philip Turl, is how much of an issue do you think security was? Because of course this was talked about quite a bit in the run-up to today's vote, considering what happened this past week on the Champs-Élysées.
Well, most of the people I've spoken to, and I've been around France talking about elections, are worried about the security situation. They're worried about the threat of another terrorist attack in France. It's in everybody's mind. It's not, will there be one? It's, when is it going to happen? And I think the attack that we saw on Thursday here in Paris in the Champs-Élysées, where a policeman was shot dead, certainly I think would have benefited Marine Le Pen, and to a certain extent, I think also François Fillon, who were both very security-conscious candidates. It doesn't appear to have done the necessary to bring François Fillon into the second round, but I think it certainly would have benefited Marine Le Pen. And Marine Le Pen was accused by many of her opposers of actually having used that attack to try to boost support for her and for her campaign. So it is a very important issue in France, but it's linked also to this issue, which we've also found in other countries, notably in the United Kingdom, with the vote in favour of Brexit, to immigration. Are terrorists coming in with immigrants into the country? There's a lot of mix-up about who these immigrants are and whether terrorists are maybe coming in from Syria or from the Middle East, and whether they're supporters of the Islamic State. So all of that has been quite a platform of discussion. On the other hand, Emmanuel Macron has been, I think, one of the candidates who's talked the least about immigration and the problems of security, much more involved in getting France back on its feet, bringing down unemployment, boosting the economy. That's really been Emmanuel Macron's platform, and that's not really a surprise because he's a banker of origin and also had been the former finance minister.
Right. Do you think that, as Philip was saying, Marine Le Pen will attack him on those issues, saying, you know, you're not totally clear on immigration, on the issue of Islam? There have been some small controversies about it. Obviously, as we just heard, he's the example, the embodiment of global finance and so on and so forth. But on this issue, we're just going to interrupt you because Marine Le Pen is speaking right now. I'm sorry.
I'm just speaking.
Mes chers compatriotes,
my fellow countrymen,
vous m'avez porté au second tour de l'élection présidentielle.
So you have brought me to the second round of the presidential elections.
L'honneur.
It is indeed quite an honor for me. I received this honor with humility and gratitude. And I wanted to tell you, the patriotic French voters, how grateful I am. This is the first step to take me to the Élysée, and it's a historical result. From now on, I have an immense responsibility, that of defending the French nation, its unity, its security, its culture, its prosperity and independence. This is also an act of French pride. A people that won't bow down, that is conscious of its value and of its future. All the French people know that the system has tried by any means to choke the political debate in this election round. Finally, that big debate will indeed take place. The French must take advantage of this historical opportunity offered to them, because what is at stake here is the wild type of globalization endangering our civilization. The choice is simple. Either we continue deregulating, no borders, no protection, and the consequence would be delocalization of factories, mass immigration, free circulation of terrorists, and the kingdom of dollar, the euro almighty, nothing to protect our national security and our purchasing power. But on the other hand, there's the true choice, not just a change in governments that have done nothing, but a true choice, a new alternative, a basic change, fundamental change that ushers in a new policy, new faces, the kind of renewal that you aspire to. Obviously, this would not have been possible with somebody who would be heir to François Hollande and to all his horrible fiascos. The time has come to liberate the French people, all of our people, not to forget the people overseas who have expressed their trust in me, and that is an honor to me. The time has come to liberate the French people from all these arrogant people who want to dictate their behavior to them, because I am the candidate of the people. I therefore appeal to all sincere patriots, wherever they may come from, whatever their origin, whatever their background, whichever way they voted in the first round, come out of these outdated quarrels and resentments. What is at stake here is the higher interest of our country. What is really essential, that is what is at stake, the survival of France. I call upon you to show unity with our project to get France on its feet again. In 1943, in Casablanca, General de Gaulle said, the grandeur of the people only comes from the people itself. And that is the principle which for 1,500 years of its history is the one that has forged the history of France. The principle that I will implement, uniting the French people, can only be done on the basis of the love of France. Long live the French people, long live the Republic, and long live France.
Well, there we have the Marseillaise being sung there after the far right's Marine Le Pen giving her acceptance speech. Once again, she has come in for the moment in second place behind Emmanuel Macron. This according to the latest tallies as they come in. Now we heard Le Pen saying indeed that it was arrogant people that were dictating to the French, telling them what they should do. And now for more on tonight's results and how things will move forward, I'd like to welcome Laurence Haïm, the spokesperson for En Marche. Thank you very much for joining us here on this historic evening for your candidate there. When we just heard Marine Le Pen say that voting for so-called Hollande's heir, which is how she refers to Emmanuel Macron, will not being about the change that France needs, how do you react to that?
I think it's an historical event, and I think Emmanuel Macron already changed the way politics looks in France. 1 year ago, there was no Emmanuel Macron. He resigned from the French government and he launched his movement. It was not a political party, it was a movement. 1 year after, he is tonight where he is. So this is an historical moment for France. We're extremely serious about our responsibility because we believe that we have a responsibility for democracy. And what we're going to see in the next 2 weeks, it's a fight between democratic values and the far right. And this is going to be a tough fight. We're going to make sure that all over France we're united and we're trying to promote a strong France inside a strong Europe, because this battle is also for Europe. The far right doesn't want Europe. We want Europe. And I think it's important for all the people who are watching us all over the world to make sure they understand what's happening in France. Tonight, we won. We're taking our mission with responsibility, with gravity, and we want to make sure that we're going to fight for the best of democracy.
Are you now basically certain that your candidate will be France's next president? First of all, he's ahead in round one, and we've seen in the past minutes all the heavyweights from the two mainstream parties that were eliminated, a historical first, throw their support behind Emmanuel Macron. From the right wing to the left wing, it seems that he is France's next president.
I followed a lot of elections, as you may know, in my former life. I was a journalist. Until it's done, it's never done. It's going to be a battle. It's going to be a battle of ideas. Nobody knows in the current environment what could happen in the next 2 weeks. So I'm not going to say at any point until it's done that Emmanuel Macron is the next French president.
But he can't lose that election.
We'll see. Again, we're very cautious. And Emmanuel Macron came tonight in front of us at his headquarters.
What did he tell you?
He told us to be serious. And he told us that, again, 1 year ago, there was nothing. 1 year ago, everybody was telling us, you're crazy. They were telling him, how can you succeed in France with no party? What's going to happen? You cannot do that. And he told us, tell them that we did it, that we're doing it. And now there's also the battle for what we're calling the legislative elections. It's going to be in mid-June. Maybe your viewers don't know about that, but you have, again, in 2 weeks, the runoff between Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen. And then mid-June, you're going to have this vote for, the National Assembly. And we're also in this battle. We want change in France. And we're beginning also tonight this battle. It's the battle of renewal for the political life in France.
Indeed, you mentioned this battle just in terms of the National Assembly. And as you say, he comes from no political party.
Yes.
So how will he begin this process of putting together a government and making it happen?
How did he do it? How did he do it tonight? People want a new proposal. We see all over the world the anxiety of the middle class. We see all over the world that people don't believe anymore in traditional politicians. And that's his success in a way tonight. People are asking for men and women to offer them something new. Emmanuel Macron did it tonight this way. It's the political transformation of the country. It's a call for renewal. And it's, again, hope and change for something new.
Would you say the hard part starts now for him? Because right now he's been the maverick, the newcomer.
It was very tough, I think, until now. It's,
But the stars aligned perfectly for him. I mean, everyone crashed out of the race and, he's on his way to the Élysée.
He worked hard.
I'm not saying he didn't work hard, but...
We worked hard. Maybe you didn't see it in front of the cameras, but we worked hard. We went to the countryside. We spoke with a lot of people. We have a precise and financed program. We really worked hard to convince that we were a new offer. It's not easy in France to do what he did, because France sometimes is very classical. It's never been done before. He's 39 years old. He's young. He did something which is quite impressive. He did something because with his team, they worked hard. And now it's not a done deal. We're going to work very hard to convince the people that we really want to transform France.
Are you concerned that it could turn dirty with Marine Le Pen between now and the second round?
I'm concerned that we will have to work hard. And again, I'm not taking anything for granted. And I think you, especially here at France 24, you followed closely elections all over the world. Sometimes you're saying this candidate is going to win, and you have a lot of debates with experts saying, we're sure this is going to be the candidate. And then what happened? It's another candidate. Again, we're going to work hard until it's done, and we feel that we have a responsibility to honor democracy.
What do you believe is his biggest weakness then, going through to thoroughly convince voters?
As a political person, I'm not going to say that my candidate is weak at any point. He's honest. Sometimes you have to be careful in politics when you're honest.
What do you think of this working hard process? It's a very American message.
It is.
In a way,
it is. It is. All the campaign has been very American in the making. I mean, it's the case with Ségolène Royal, and Laura Same is the spokesperson. But and
I don't have anything to do with Ségolène Royal.
No. But the way it worked with the groundwork and knocking at doors and the message being like, we want to change and put the table there. But what I see here is that France will be very divided between the people who have and the people who have not, and the winners and the losers, and that clearly the message of Marine Le Pen. And you will have the people En Marche are the entrepreneurs, are the people who want to unemployment right now, are scared that they might lose their employment. They don't see themselves as entrepreneurs. So I think we have here a same sort of Trumpism and Hillary Clinton kind of thing. But the difference is that in France, clearly the Front National has a history, and it's very close and in the mind of everyone where Marine Le Pen is coming from, with her father and with the party. And I think that's where it's more easy for Emmanuel Macron to have a chance to win in front of this candidate, which is a populist candidate, compared to what happened with Hillary Clinton and Trump in the US.
Yeah, I just would like to say something that, people, and you just said it, it's like what's happening in the United States. I believe that it's different than what's happening in the United States in many ways. And I think the French campaign do not have anything to do in many ways with the American elections. Why? Because the rules are completely different. For instance, in the past 24 hours, as a spokesperson, I was not able to go on TV, on radio. It doesn't happen in the United States. People are campaigning until the last moment, even in the booths. And also the money structure is completely different. You have the right for each candidate to do a political TV. No, but the message, we did a French campaign, and
I'm talking about the psychology of the campaign.
I know, but that's
the people of the countryside.
Yeah, but I know, but some people are saying, you're doing an American campaign. And I don't think he did an American campaign. I think he did a campaign full of substance, and he went again to the countryside. No, it was full of substance. I see that you're looking at me with a smile.
I would like to say that, like Trump, he seems to be more pragmatic. He says, well, based on my intelligence, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it as I see it.
Don't tell me that you're comparing Emmanuel Macron to Donald Trump.
Well, I am on the side.
Because that's something which is quite the opposite. Let me tell you that.
I'm sure you know, but I'm an American. And so I was in America on November 8th, so I lived that experience. And where I agree, I think there's a notion of branding that's coming over to France in the way you have to brand yourself. You have 11 candidates vice. You have to make yourself heard. And that is the challenge that they have to face.
I agree, but there's a big difference again, because our campaigns in France are based on substance. And in America, sometimes you see a lot of candidates doing stump speeches. Usually the speech is 22 minutes. Here, when you follow the speeches, it's about real problems. And it's not the same speech. And, it's a little bit different. It's not a marketing campaign.
Well, some people have said, however, that this campaign was different. And then, in fact, many of the scandals took away information or time that would be given to actually focus on many of the issues. And you had just mentioned, of course, 11 candidates. We do have to touch upon a few of the other candidates who are speaking tonight, because, of course, there are 9 people who are no longer in the running. That is Nicolas Dupont-Aignan. He's making his concession speech. We can see right there. I'm going to see if we are indeed going to listen, and I believe we are.
No, we're
okay. Well, we are not. Indeed, we do not have the translation.
He might be a minor factor, but he scored around 5%, and he probably ate up some crucial votes from François Fillon tonight. So he was a minor candidate, but not that minor, because he probably led to the elimination of the conservative candidate for the first time in the history of the Fifth Republic.
And indeed, and François Fillon coming in as of now pretty much statistically tied with the far left's Jean-Luc Mélenchon at roughly 19%. Both of the candidates. We are going to cross back to the Fillon headquarters as things are winding down there. This evening, our James Creedon is standing by with a guest.
We're on Indeed, that's right, Molly. I'm joined here by Jean-Baptiste Guillot, who was a member of François Fillon's support group, Civil Society. He, in fact, wrote his sports policy. Isn't that right, Jean-Baptiste?
Absolutely.
So I imagine you must be quite disappointed this evening.
With a group of people. Yes, I am disappointed and a little bit surprised, because I thought François Fillon would be in the second round. So
you really did think he was going to rally and he was going to get into the second round?
And I thought that he was even in the first place, but that just,
So you're one of the people who believed in the whole so-called hidden vote, le vote caché, that he would score higher, but it didn't come to pass in the end. Why do you think that?
Yeah, I had many friends, for example, who were tempted by Emmanuel Macron, and finally we were thinking about voting back to François Fillon. So no, I was disappointed strongly.
So you think his votes, some of them went to Emmanuel Macron, that might explain why he didn't get into the second round? Emmanuel Macron was the main threat for Fillon?
I don't know if it's a threat, because now I think we have all to support Emmanuel Macron for the second round. So
Can I just say this evening when François Fillon spoke out and gave his support to Emmanuel Macron, there wasn't a huge amount of applause downstairs. You get the sense that Emmanuel Macron is not very popular here.
Well, it's 1 hour ago that we lost, so leave us some time to accept that. But no, there's a strong support for Emmanuel Macron. But it's true that we're looking also to the parliamentary elections now, and the Republicans, they may have a majority. It's possible because the situation is a little bit confused in France. You know, Emmanuel Macron is not in charge of a party, so
which means Emmanuel Macron would have to govern with essentially the opposition if Les Républicains scored well.
I hope that there's going to be a Republican majority, and that maybe Emmanuel Macron may, charge François Baroin as a prime minister, and to have a government like that with people like also Gérard Collomb, for example, that I think is a good person, a government with different...
Can I just ask you, Jean-Baptiste, I was there during the victory night when François Fillon won the primary. There was just this electric atmosphere, a real sense that François Fillon was on his way to the Élysée Palace. He was favourite in the polls, and there was a real sense that, it was a path was open towards the Élysée. It's a very different atmosphere here this evening. How did you, as a member of François Fillon's team, deal with this disintegration, even if, I guess it's maybe excessive to say disintegration of that momentum, but certainly the fact that it was dented along the way. I heard rumours of a lot of tension behind the scenes with people leaving the campaign, etc. It must have been difficult at times.
I'm not a politician, so I can't say anything about that, but the truth is that the campaign was very hard, very tough on our candidate, and but I think the future will show that there will be a lot of he will be discharged from the various charges that he will be cleared.
You think he will be cleared of the various
charges? He will be cleared from the charges. Yeah, of course. And it's all the campaign focused on those aspects, and it's a pity for me because we couldn't deliver our programs, even the other candidates. But that's life.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Jean-Baptiste, for your reactions. Back to you now in the studio.
The downbeat mood, obviously, at the François Fillon headquarters. Let's just take a look again at the score of François Fillon, who arrived third, the worst place, obviously, when there's a runoff with two candidates with 19.7% of the votes. Just behind him is Jean-Luc Mélenchon, Benoît Hamon, the socialist candidate with 6.2%, a collapse of the Socialist Party, the ruling party, and Nicolas Dupont-Aignan with 4.9%. Nicolas Dupont-Aignan is on the right of François Fillon, and as I mentioned earlier, he maybe played a decisive role in the defeat of François Fillon. Laurent Saïm, let me just get back to you because obviously there'll be a lot of accusations. We heard it from Marine Le Pen that essentially Emmanuel Macron is just François Hollande under another guise.
Yeah, we're going to respond, of course, to all the attacks from the National Front. We're ready for that, and we know what they're going to say. I'm not going to repeat that.
Because François Hollande is going to support Emmanuel Macron. He called him, congratulated him, and will endorse him.
Yes, and Alain Juppé too. I mean, everybody who is a progressive in this country and everyone who wants democracy is going to support Emmanuel Macron. 30 seconds ago, Anne Hidalgo, the mayor of Paris, is asking people to vote for Emmanuel Macron. You're going to have here something...
She was a supporter of Benoît Hamon.
I know, but you're going to have something in France which is happening right now and which is going to happen in the next 2 weeks. You have a battle of someone who is a progressive person who believes in democracy with Emmanuel Macron against the far right. I mean, that's it. Marine Le Pen is the daughter of Jean-Marie Le Pen, and this is the far right.
She's no different.
she's absolutely no different. And I think you saw that a few days ago with the Veldiv remarks. I mean, I was an intern 30 years ago when I was a journalist, and I was in a radio called RTL, and I saw Jean-Marie Le Pen talked in a shameful way about the Jewish people. And he was saying that the Holocaust was a point of detail. He has been condemned for that. Then 30 years ago, 30 years after, in the same show, at the same time, really 30 years after, in the similar show, his daughter, Marine Le Pen, made a really shocking comment about the Veldiv, about the French people. Exactly. And this is the same thing. She tried, and they tried for many years, for many months, to erase this kind of far-right thing, much more on the center. And we saw that tonight when she was quoting General de Gaulle. This is not that. This is a far-right party that don't believe in Europe, that don't want Europe. It's the opposite of Emmanuel Macron, and this is going to be the battle. This is going to be the battle for Europe, this election.
We are waiting to hear from Emmanuel Macron, who should be speaking any moment now. But that being said, we have then the National Front in round two against Emmanuel Macron. Now, he, of course, has been accused of being too ambiguous throughout his campaign, neither left, neither right, which did not sit well with too many French. Will he need to clarify his program more, or do you think actually he can take a backseat considering he is against the National Front?
But he clarified that already. He's not on the right side. He's not on the left side. He's from the left side. He's from the right side.
Yes, no, I don't mean actually where he stands.
He doesn't have to clarify that. He has just to say what he's going to do with France. He wants to reform the work laws. He wants to do a lot of things about the economy. He wants to do something which has never been done about the unemployment in this country. He wants to have a strong relation with Germany. He wants to make sure that this summer he's not going to go on holidays, but he's going to work hard for the French people.
He's going to be attacked by Marine Le Pen on immigration, on Islam, and his positions have not been that clear. So he will be attacked. He will need to come out.
He already came out, and he will come out more when the attacks will come. Let me tell you something. He's 39 years old. He did something which has never been done before. He's ready for the next 2 weeks.
I'd like to take the time to introduce some new guests that we have, because indeed we have things moving throughout the evening. We've got Constance Le Gris, a member of the European Parliament, Les Républicains. Thank you very much for coming in. We also have Bruno Cotres from Sciences Po University, a political scientist and a CNRS. Thank you also for coming in. Firstly, as we do have the initial results, of course, we know who's going through to round two. However, we don't have the final results. What do you make, though, of what we've seen so far in terms of how has France voted?
I really think that election talks about something extremely important for France, which started probably a long time ago. It's not only that election, it started probably in the 90s, which is something about the way that global economy and the way that European integration also perturbates, provoke profound change inside French politics. It's not the first time that we can see that Jean-Marie Le Pen got 14.5 in 88, 15 in 95. He qualified second round in 2002. We voted no against the referendum in 2005. So that election talks a lot about attitude of the French, and also this new conflict, this new big confrontation in France between pro-EU, pro-integration. Macron did extremely clearly that if you elect me French president, there will be a major big Franco-German initiative to restart EU. And the other side of France, which feel, maybe it's not true, but feel that they are the losers of that process. So it talks a lot about that vote on today, talks a lot about this new cleavage that we have, since it's not from today. We have seen that from the mid of the 90s, that was there already.
Right, just before you start, I'm just quoting the German foreign minister, who said he was happy about the result, and sure, quote unquote, Macron will be president. There you go.
Again, an election, and I'm going to repeat myself, an election is not done until it's done. I just want to tell you, and I know you have an international audience, and I think it's important to see the difference between Marine Le Pen and Emmanuel Macron. A few days ago, Marine Le Pen was invited to a show, and she has this program. It was the evening news of the most important network, and she has the editors of the program to withdraw the European flag because the European flag was near the French flag. That's the difference. In our meetings, all across this campaign, all over, we had and we will always have the European flag. The difference is this symbol.
Well, indeed, and it was very clear, even on the stage next to Le Pen, there were only two French flags, not even the European flag.
She's totally rejecting Europe. And we live in a world which is quite sensitive for all the democracies. And that's, again, the symbol of this election. And we have to make sure that it's not only about France, it's also about a vision of what we want for Europe.
Constance, what do you make of what we saw then tonight?
Well, just before you go, I'm just going to quote a member of your party, Jean-François Copé, who said the right just went through its 21 of April. 21 of April is a reference to 2002, when the left was eliminated in the first round.
Yes.
You agree with that?
Absolutely, I agree with this sentence. Of course, the differences between the two situations are here, but it has
But
something
for
to
the
do
first
with
time, your party is not in the second round.
Yes, and the Socialist Party is not in the second round.
But this happened
also,
before. This is the first
and
for you.
At the same time, the two major parties are absent and didn't qualify for this second round. That's the big historical change and the big historical event of this election. I feel very disappointed, of course, for my political family and for François Fillon. We didn't succeed in convincing our French citizens that we had the best proposals and that our candidate was ready to run this country. But I think now that I listened very carefully to what Mr. François Fillon said, we have to make clear that we will never vote in favor of the extreme right candidate and that we will then vote against Madame Le Pen and we will vote for Mr. Macron.
Do you think François Fillon complained?
Jouyet or Mr. Whatever, was behind the curtains, and playing a role. It's a dirty role. That's not the point.
No, some people are saying that's the point. That's why he lost.
That's not what François Fillon said. And obviously there has been many different events during that campaign were strange and attacks going on and really difficulties for our candidate to expose his program, to present all his proposals. So there has been a very special atmosphere during this campaign. But no, the question is that we didn't succeed. We weren't able to convince our citizens that we had the best program. So that's the game.
Well,
we lost.
But besides the Les Républicains, also, of course, the Socialists, they did not succeed tonight. I'd like to welcome Karim Bouamran, the spokesperson for the Socialist Party. It's a pretty rough night.
Yes, pretty rough. Yeah, so it's a bad surprise for us, bad surprise for all the people who support our party, bad surprise for all the people who support our republic.
Is it really a surprise? I mean,
actually, to have Marine Le Pen so high, yeah, it's a bad surprise for us.
No, I'm talking Benoît Hamon so low.
Benoît Hamon, actually, yeah.
6%, 6%.
6.5, actually, it's one of the most horrible score that we ever done since Gaston Defferre. So, yeah, we expect to do more than 10, so 6.5. Actually, exactly like my colleague said for the right wing, that's a defeat. We didn't succeed. And we'll have to make how do we say in the business term, a SWOT analysis tomorrow. But now today we have only one position to have a strong block against the National Party. Because now we're not talking about an opposing politic party. We're talking about an enemy of the Republic. So you have 80% of people who decided to vote today, which is a big score for the Republic. You have a lot of people who support our Republic, and we need to save our Republic, which means everybody against Marine Le Pen.
When you see the score that Benoît Hamon received, just over 6%, where does the fault lie? Is it with the candidate? Is it with the unpopular outgoing president, or with fellow party members?
Actually, we have many reasons, to be honest, many reasons, and it's too early to provide and to have a global discussion about why we fell. Tomorrow we have a extraordinary meeting of the direction of the Socialist Party, and we'll be able to analyze what we did well, what we have to improve, and it's too early. I had some personal defeat in my political career, and my thoughts is for Benoît Hamon and all the people who make and to say why. Tomorrow we have a global analysis and we'll see. The most important things now is to save our republic, because I'm not sure that we have 100% of change that Marine Le Pen will not be the next president. So we have to fight.
You still think there's a chance? I mean, obviously this brings back memories of 2002 when her father, at the surprise of everyone, made it to the second round, but clearly he was beaten soundly by Jacques Chirac, because many socialists went to vote for Jacques Chirac. Do you fear that this might be different this time, that really, despite calls from the Socialist Party leader, probably the president, to endorse Emmanuel Macron, people will stay home or not?
Bottom line is that 2002 is 15 years ago, and it's basic things to say that. Now it's people, and I am, before to be a spokesman, I am a basic militant, close to my field, close to my ground. And the thing is that people are very lost, very lost. They were lost because of the polls, they were lost because now the guys, there is no left wings, no right wings anymore, lost because they don't vote for someone, but
estimates which have come from those 500 test polling stations where we're getting our figures from our partners Ipsos, Sopra Steria. So these are the candidates. We know, of course, that Benoît Hamon that Marine Le Pen and Emmanuel Macron came out on top in that round. François Fillon from the Republicans, 19.7%, putting him in third position, and Jean-Luc Mélenchon from the left, unsubmissive France, putting him at 19.2%, as we were just saying, Benoît Hamon from the Socialists there on just 6%. If we go back to looking at how that compares to 2012, the first round results, just to give a comparison of how the party figures have changed in that position, as you can see, the Socialist Party, a hugely different picture. François Hollande back in 2012 in the first round getting a score of almost 29% in that first round. A big fall too for the Les Républicains, as they're now, and of course in 2012 they were the UMP, back to 27% for Nicolas Sarkozy, and the score for Marine Le Pen very different as well, of course, much higher this time around with a score of 21.9% for her compared to 17.9% back in 2012. François Bayrou, not on the ballot this year, but he was the centrist candidate back in 2012. And if we look at Jean-Luc Mélenchon as well, his vote up significantly on this time around. Let's roll back to 2007, though. If we watch in particular what happened with François Bayrou's vote. Now, as I say, he's not coming from the same movement in particular as Emmanuel Macron, but it is representative that there was a centrist vote going back as far as 2007. François Bayrou getting a score of 18.6. Of course, Emmanuel Macron coming in much higher than that this time around at 23.7%. Again, if we go back to 2007, you can see the dominance of the main two parties, Les Républicains. The Socialist Party, Ségolène Royal, was the candidate back in 2007. A big change there, but both of those parties now not in the final round. Jean-Marie Le Pen, representing, of course, the Front National, his vote was 10% back in 2007. Of course, 2002, the election before that, which was the one that surprised many voters here in France, because that was the one in which Jean-Marie Le Pen got into the second round. That was the last time we had the Front National in the second round of a French presidential election. You can see he was up against Jacques Chirac from UMP, Les Républicains, back in 2002.
Thank you very much, Stephen. I think in that last election we just saw, it's the only time when none of the candidates reached the 20% threshold in the first round. This didn't happen today because both Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen got more than 20% of the votes. The figure are still being refined. We'll bring them as they come in. But now we're crossing to Hénin-Beaumont, the headquarters of the Marine Le Pen camp tonight, with Catherine Nicholson, who is with a guest. Catherine?
Yes, I'm here with Denis Franciscain, who is normally based in New York City in the United States. Thanks very much for being with us, Mr. Franciscain.
Pleasure.
Now, you're normally based in the United States, as I said, and you're also the National Secretary for the National Front for French Voters Abroad. What do you make of her showing this evening? She's come in second place, according to the results we have, rather than the first place that many of the polls have been predicting. A disappointment?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, obviously we're very happy. You know, she's running for the second round. She's very close though for the first place. So we'll see. I mean, I want to wait for the numbers tomorrow.
So what would you put Marine Le Pen's success down to? She has, of course, increased her vote participation, her vote score from 2012 by several points.
Yeah, I mean, her campaign was devoted about what she called the, the forgotten. Those that, the medias have forgotten, those are the classical political people just have forgotten. And actually, if you look at the numbers, rural France has voted in big majority for Marine. So obviously there's a new shift that we need to, to take into account. There's, what they call the peripheral France that's now voting for the FN. It's a vote of adhesion, I would say, and they all now want her as a president, and that's huge.
At the same time, that sort of outsider vote that you're talking about, we saw more than 19% of that go to Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who's all the way on the other end of the political spectrum, the far left candidate. What would you put that down to? And do you think that maybe he nibbled into Marine Le Pen's score somewhat?
It's possible. I mean, what his program, is very like left-wing oriented. And Marine also had, some. I'm talking about, the retirement, for example, about healthcare, Social Security, and I think they were very close on that. And of course, the media, pushed him that much because when they saw that Macron was starting to slow down, they pushed him, to counterbalance at some point. So I will be very intrigued to see what those voters will do. Of course, he will vote against her, but what the voters will do, that's another story. I mean, if someone considers himself as a real left, would he vote for a banker? I'm not sure.
As we know, Marine Le Pen has a very strongly anti-European message. She's promised to hold a referendum on leaving the European Union. However, membership of the European Union is written into France's constitution. It's extremely difficult to change the constitution, particularly without a parliamentary majority. Is Marine Le Pen really likely to be able to get a parliamentary majority, even if she were to become president, and carry on with the policies that she's promising to her voters? Is it realistic?
Well, what she wants the people to decide. I mean, Europe, the way it is, the economic Europe has been a problem since we turned to the euro. So, I mean...
But is that achievable, considering the political background that she's standing against? She, of course, has done very well, it seems, in this first round. However, the Front National does not have a great number of elected representatives.
No, that's true. I mean, but it's not something that will be done, tomorrow. So what she wants is to open the debate, because there's no debate in France about euro, about, the EU constitution. And then after that, she will ask people to make a decision. I mean, it's very democratic. And of course, she's not going to do that tomorrow. It's just not feasible. But the prospect of doing it little by little, I think this is very engaging.
Now we know that Donald Trump and many of his supporters, after he was successfly elected as the American president, how close are their ties?
I mean, I would say the advisor of Trump, are aware of the advisor of Marine, So, I mean, obviously Marine, she's especially tonight, she's a #1 contender. She might become the next president. So I have no surprise. It's not surprising that, leaders of the world, look at Putin, they just want to meet her and see what she has to say. It's not surprising at all.
And in terms of French voters abroad, we know that there's a very strong support for different candidates in different parts of that community. Emmanuel Macron has got very strong support among many expats. Do people who've left France support a nationalist candidate here back home?
Well, I also think that people who leave France, they're not really aware of what's going on here. Okay, so they think the way they live, and the opportunity they have, with their job, I think maybe they think it's the same thing here, which I believe that may explain this vote. But I mean, there's some part of the world, like people are, voted for Marine. So I mean, it's very different. We talk about different, people. If you talk to people in New York who, work in Wall Street, obviously they're completely blind to like a more, I would say, patriotic, topics, obviously.
So perhaps a bit of a hard sell for you sometimes with French people living in New York. Just want to look ahead to the second round. Of course, we just have 2 short weeks now. Marine Le Pen does not have other candidates rallying behind her at this point. Emmanuel Macron does. He also has the current president of France rallying behind him. It does look like a very big uphill struggle for Marine Le Pen.
Yes, but don't forget that again. Don't mix the Fillon and his voters. Okay, if the voters consider themselves as right-wing people, would they vote for left wing? I'm not sure. I mean, again, like this is very interesting because we will see, what the right-wing world, will vote. Will they vote for a patriot movement? Or will they vote for a banker? That's a big question.
Okay, thank you very much for speaking to us. Denis Franciscain speaking to us here on France 24, representative of French National Front voters abroad. Back to you, Molly and Mark.
All right, Catherine, thank you very much for that there. And we're just going to once again bring in a bit of an update of these figures as they continue to change throughout the evening. Now, we do know, of course, that Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen have made it through to the second round, but we do have partial results that have been released by the French Interior Ministry. This based on 20 million votes counted so far, and they do indeed put Marine Le Pen ahead with 24.38%. We've got centrist Macron coming in at 22.19. And so really we just need to stress that indeed the vote counting continues. The Interior Ministry also saying that as of yet, the large cities, the votes there have not yet been counted. Once again, that is because polls there closed an hour later. Now, Constance, I'd like to bring you in because we were touching on something before. Of course, you are a member of Les Républicains, so your candidate, François Fillon, is out of the running. But as a member of the European Parliament, are you happy to see Emmanuel Macron in there or not necessarily?
Well, it's difficult for me to be happy tonight. We just lost, and so I don't have any feeling of satisfaction or happiness. Actually, Emmanuel Macron's proposals on the European Union and what he said, it was a little bit vague and not always absolutely clear and precise, but he said things about the restart of the European Union, of a Franco-German initiative. We don't know yet what kind of Franco-German initiative could be taken, but he made some proposals for the relaunch, the restart of the European Union, and I do agree with this position. So if I have to explain and to expose the different reasons why tonight I can tell you, like François Fillon, like Alain Juppé, like many other important leaders of my party, I vote and they vote for Emmanuel Macron. Obviously, the European reasons are part of these arguments and these reasons.
Philip Troll, what do you think Marine Le Pen should do between now and round two? Obviously, she has an uphill battle because she has all what's left. Maybe it's not a lot, but of the mainstream parties coalescing around Emmanuel Macron, who is already high in the polls. I mean, what do you think she needs to do to really have a shot?
Well, if we look back to 2002 and the last time this occurred, when Jean-Marie Le Pen, her father, got through to the second round of the presidential election, as we heard earlier on, he got less than 20%, as did Jacques Chirac at the time. And in the second round, Jacques Chirac won with 82% of the vote. I think this time round, if Marine Le Pen faces Emmanuel Macron, which appears to be the case, the score will be a lot closer. So she has less of a struggle than Jean-Marie Le Pen would have had in 2002. But the big difference is that I don't think Jean-Marie Le Pen ever wanted to become president, and she does. So what could she do to try to increase her score? Well, first of all, she's going to have to try to forge alliances. Now, as we've already heard tonight, most of the tenors from the heavyweights from within the major parties, even within the Republican movement, straight away with Jean-Pierre Raffarin, almost immediately after the result was announced, saying he was going to vote for Emmanuel Macron. The former Prime Minister Manuel Valls from the Socialist Party saying he's going to vote for Emmanuel Macron. So it's very difficult for the National Front to forge any kind of alliance with any of the normal parties. So there she'll have a struggle to try to find people she can forge an alliance with, maybe with Nicolas Dupont-Aignan, some of the smaller candidates who are slightly more right-wing than the main political parties. And the second problem she always has is, of course, this glass ceiling that the National Front always has to try to overcome and to increase its support above. And I think the problem this time around is that Marine Le Pen will find that problem again. They're saying, okay, we can call on the French people. The French people will support us. There are all those who would have voted for François Fillon if he'd been elected to the second round, who will maybe vote for Marine Le Pen. But even that isn't sure. If you look at all the main tenors within the Republican Party who are already voting, already asking their supporters to vote for Emmanuel Macron.
But one thing that we did hear from that guest speaking with Catherine Nicholson at the Le Pen campaign was that, however, it's not sure in terms of who on the left is really willing to cast their ballot for Macron.
Well, that's also the case. And a lot of people, I think that the problem is in France, you have often a situation...
We have to stop because Jean-Luc Mélenchon is talking. It'll be interesting to see what he has to say.
Let's listen in.
En toute hypothèse, ce ne sera pas celui qui a été annoncé.
It will not be the result that was announced. The Ministry of the Interior has reserved its statement until midnight. Of course, by then, the mediocrats, the oligarchs will be jubilating. Nothing is finer for them than a second round between two candidates who approve and want to extend the current institutions as they are, who do not express any awareness of the ecological challenges and on the perils of that threaten civilization, and they both intend to attack the rights that have been acquired, the social rights that have been acquired by our citizens. Whatever the case, when the official results will be known, we will respect them, we will abide by them. I cannot say nor do more at this point in time. Each of you has voted in conscience, and you know what your duty is. Therefore, I will abide by that. I have received no mandate from the 450,000 people who submitted my candidacy to express myself in their place, on their behalf, on what is to come next. These persons will therefore decide on the basis of the platform, and the results of their votes will be made public.
Mon beau pays,
my great country,
ma belle patrie,
my wonderful motherland, and all of us,
nous pouvons être fiers
we can be proud
de ce que nous avons entrepris
of what we have undertaken and what we have achieved.
Nous sommes une force consciente.
We are a force that is enthusiastic and aware of its power. I call on you to stay united, to stay on the march, and to be on the go, because the challenges facing us, and we have designated without hiding any of them and hiding any of the difficulties that they pose and to be solved. These challenges remain to be taken up.
Et ceux qui prétendent
and those who claim today
à l'honneur de nous représenter
that they have the honor of representing all of us have already shown that they're incapable of doing so.
L'heure à venir et les jours qui
the days that are about to come will show who has the character and the awareness, and so that all people,
vous êtes
you are facing a new world which is beginning to emerge, and we must remain loyal to liberty, equality, and fraternity. Long live the Republic, long live France.
Hello, and you've been listening there to Jean-Luc Mélenchon, the far-left candidate conceding defeat in this extraordinary night. For those of you just joining us, welcome back to France 24's ongoing live coverage of the first round of the French presidential election. I'm Annette Young, and as I just said, it's been an unprecedented presidential election. And now that we know it will be far-right candidate Marine Le Pen of the National Front who will be facing off centrist candidate Emmanuel Macron in the second round on May 7th. Now, partial results are showing that Macron obtained 23.7% and Le Pen getting 21.9% of the vote. Should I just say, actually, these are not partial results, these are official estimates. We are still waiting for confirmation of partial results, which have been coming in from the Interior Minister, and we hope to be giving you those in a few minutes' time. And as one leading French journalist wrote, this election was indeed shaped by economic insecurity, cultural paranoia, and terrorism, with every political convention having been thrown out of the window. Now, the world is going to continue to watch to see if France is indeed to follow a populist trend in the wake of Donald Trump's victory and Brexit. And a reminder that our live coverage is also being streamed on Twitter and also via our website, france24.com. We've also got our team of reporters who have been on the ground at the HQ of the top candidates. We've got Catherine Nicholson following Marine Le Pen, James Creedon with Francois Fillon's team, Chris Moore, who's with Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who we've just been hearing from, and Claire Williams following Emmanuel Macron, and Luc Schrago with Benoit Hamon and his supporters. Now, throughout the night, we're going to be indeed joined by guests and analysts, but first let's go to the headquarters of the two front runners. Let me start with our journalist Claire Williams, who's at Emmanuel Macron's headquarters. I imagine the mood there is still incredibly just one of excitement, but the battle is still far from over. He's got 2 weeks, hasn't he, Claire, to convince the country that he should be president.
Yes, the battle is not over. No one in this room can be complacent, but tonight they're not really thinking about that. They're just excited and thrilled that Emmanuel Macron came up top in the result today. He's going to walk on the stage behind me very, very shortly and speak to all of his supporters here. They've been waiting now for an hour or so, waiting for him and come and speak to them because they need to know what's next. They need to know what's next. What's next for the next 2 weeks of campaigning, for the next round of the presidential election. And after that, we have the parliamentary elections too.
And let's not forget that his party En Marche didn't even exist a year ago. Yet, you know, talking to his supporters and hearing what they were saying earlier in the evening, the presidency is well within reach.
That the presidency is well within reach. They're certainly ecstatic here tonight, but they do need to be careful. And a few of them have said to me quietly that yes, they are a bit worried because the En Marche movement, as you say, only began a year ago. It's not even an official political party yet. And then the En Marche has no MPs in parliament at the moment. Those elections that are in June, it's going to be the first time that En Marche will ever put forward any candidates. So if Macron is going to be a president, he also needs to govern. He needs to govern the French country. He needs to govern. And if he doesn't have any MPs in parliament who were there for him at the time, then that's not going to work very well for him. So En Marche, the next battle, obviously winning that second round in 2 weeks' time, and then the parliamentary elections in June.
Thank you. That's Claire Williams there from the very loud and noisy headquarters for the centrist candidate, Emmanuel Macron, who's made it through to the first run. Now, the other front runner is Marine Le Pen from the National Front, and Catherine Nicholson is spending the evening at their party HQ. A very upbeat mood I can see there, Kat.
There absolutely is. This is normally a sports hall. It's much more like a discotheque, a 70s one this evening, I have to say. People have been dancing conga lines, they're wrapping themselves in French flags, and they're singing On va gagner, we are going to win. Now, this for the candidate who has come in, it seems, second in the first round of the presidential election. However, for the National Front, which was formerly such an outlying fringe party, this really is a historic moment. This is only the second time in their history, of course, that they've made it into the second round of a French presidential election. And this time it does seem like the Front National candidate does have a broader electoral base to draw upon. Now, Marine Le Pen spoke on that stage rather briefly behind me just around about an hour ago. She spoke really giving a very patriotic nationalist speech, talking about this historic moment as she saw it, and also talking about giving freedom back to French people, giving them back their country, and then making her way out of this hall relatively quickly, it seems, in a very jubilant mood.
Catherine, and now she's going to come under even closer scrutiny over her policies, isn't she?
Absolutely, and Marine Le Pen does have a kind of policy program that is very divisive among French people. She is anti-European. She wants to have a referendum on leaving the European Union or potentially the euro currency. She's got very divisive policies on what to do about terrorist threats facing France at the moment. The debate around France is very divided on that. Marine Le Pen is very straight on this, though. She hasn't changed her message for quite a long time. She wants to close France's borders, take it out of the Schengen Agreement, stop people moving in and out freely, and also come down much more harshly on people with foreign nationality who commit crimes here in France. Now, I think we can expect her to continue with those messages that have worked so well for her over the next 2 weeks. But she does have a problem reaching out beyond her voter base, and she does have some of the same problems that Claire Williams was just telling us about with Emmanuel Macron. Her party does not have elected members of parliament to call upon, and is, as we know, a bit of an unknown quantity. So some of the people from the party that I've spoken to this evening, they say that they're confident, but I think they know that they do have a bit of an uphill struggle ahead of them.
It certainly is going to be a very sort of full-on 2 weeks for both of these candidates. Thank you very much. That's Kat Nicholson, who we'll be no doubt speaking to later in the evening. Now, with us now on the set is Olivia Gregoire, the Director of Olicare, a political communications consultancy, Charles Begbeder, a member of the centre-right Republican Party, and we also have Bruno Gollnisch, a member of the National Front and a member of the European Parliament. Thank you to all of you coming in on a sort of extraordinary night. But before I start talking to all of you about the events as they unfold, let me just have a chat here with our French politics editor, Mark Perelman, who's had a very busy 3 hours, but very happily has stayed behind with us. Mark, an extraordinary campaign and a sort of interesting result in the fact that for the first time ever, we don't have the two mainstream parties having either of their candidates in the second round.
Yes, in that sense, it is a truly historical election. It has happened in the past that one of the mainstream party didn't make it to the second round. Now both of them did not make it. François Fillon, the conservative candidate, came in third, and Benoît Hamon, the socialist candidate, scored only 6.5%, which is a major collapse. So it's not that they lost, but they lost really roundly. And this is a totally new page that is being turned, as Emmanuel Macron said. And it's true, because he was nowhere basically a year ago. He launched his movement. Everybody was kind of looking down on him. Well, what's this all about? Former banker, never ran for office, was groomed by François Hollande. He has no chance whatsoever to become president. You can go back and look at what everyone was saying a year ago, including myself, and you'll probably see that's what everyone was saying. Now he is the clear favorite to become France's next president. On the other hand, Marine Le Pen, that's not so much of a surprise. It would have been a surprise if she was not in the second round. All the polls consistently put her in the second round. The last days have been more tense. Maybe Bruno Gollnisch will talk about this, because there was some concern that she might actually not make it. She made it to the second round, but obviously she has a major uphill battle. We saw member of the Republican Party, of the Socialist Party, immediately endorsing Emmanuel Macron. No one has endorsed Marine Le Pen, so obviously she is clearly the outsider in 2 weeks' time, but she thinks she has a chance, and there'll be a debate between both candidates, and it will certainly be decisive.
The battle lines are certainly being drawn up, Mark, but just because I want to cross to Chris Moore, who's with Jean-Luc Mélenchon. We just heard there from Mélenchon, obviously a disappointed person. I mean, this was somebody who, again, put on an extraordinary campaign with all of his holograms and use of digital technology.
Yes, he hoped that the late surge he had would propel him to the second round. He reached 19%, which is better than the 11% he got last time around, but it's not enough. he's eliminated. What's maybe more surprising in the speech we just heard before is that he did not tell his voters what to do for the second round. People would have expected that someone from the far right would say the Republic is in danger, Marine Le Pen is about to enter the Élysée Palace, vote against her. However, for now, he hasn't given any instructions, and let's not forget that he still got 19% of the votes, so it adds some uncertainty. Obviously, we'll have to wait for the first polls for the second round to come out, but the ones that have been taken before and taking the
look back, however, to and imploded. And this time round, you know, if you look back even 5 or 6 weeks or so ago, the second round looked at a very distant possibility. That's really added to an enormous sense of frustration here. Jean-Luc Mélenchon actually performing very well in the wake of that late surge and just missing out by a few percent. As you heard from Marc there, some interesting things coming out as he addressed his supporters to cries of resistance. So Jean-Luc Mélenchon is a long-serving politician here in France, but he really has led this movement as a kind of uprising, a kind of resistance movement. And he said that if it is, as we've seen Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen in the second round, they are both in different ways diametrically opposed to what he and his supporters believe in. He says they're going to maintain the current political structure, the current system, although that's perhaps something Emmanuel Macron might disagree with, and that they don't care about the environment, either of them. Remember, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, part of his programme was a total shake-up of the system. He said he would be the last president, if elected, of France's Fifth Republic, that he would pave the way towards a new constitution and a Sixth Republic, which gave the people and Parliament more power. And as you heard from Marc, he has for now refused to give advice on what his supporters should do next. He says he's going to wait for the definitive results to come out and then consult the people who've backed his movement before issuing any further advice.
Thank you, Chris Moore. Chris Moore there at Mélenchon's headquarters. Now, here with me in the studio is Steve Carroll, who's been following the figures this evening. Stephen, give us the breakdown when it comes to the full results of those 11 candidates.
And now we're just going to first of all clear up a little bit of confusion about where their results are coming from. We have two sources this evening. One are results coming from the Interior Ministry. They are incomplete results. They represent 20 million votes, or around 38 or 39% of votes that have been cast. These are votes that were cast outside the main cities, and these figures are giving Marine Le Pen a slight lead over Emmanuel Macron, 24% to 22%. The figures you're looking at on your screen now are based on our estimates, which is part of a national projections. They're giving us a more complete picture of how things will look overall. These are the two leading candidates, as we've been saying: Emmanuel Macron on 23.9%, Marine Le Pen on 21.7. Now, if we're to look through the rest, there are, of course, 11 candidates, as you said, in all. If we look to how the rest of those candidates fared in this election, François Fillon is next down the line on those figures on just 20%, excuse me, from the latest update that we have. These are figures coming from the polling company Ipsos. So 20% for François Fillon, followed by Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who we just heard Chris Moore speaking to us there, 19.2%. Estimated results, then followed by Benoît Hamon from the Socialist Party, 6.3%, a very disappointing result for the Socialist Party, and Nicolas Dupont-Aignan on just under 5% as well. There were, of course, other candidates involved in this race as well. If we have a look at how their figures turned out in the end of these estimates for the first round of voting here, we can see there are, of course, all below 5%. We have Jean Lassalle, Philippe Poutou, François Asselineau, Nathalie Arthaud and Jacques Cheminade all completing that 11 roundup of candidates. These are the estimates, as I say. These figures will be confirmed by official results when we have full counts from across the country.
So, Stephen, how did the leading candidates' performance compare to previous years?
Well, there's a big change, and the big shift that we've been talking about this evening is that neither of the traditionally two leading parties in France are in the second round, at least according to our estimate figures. If we're to look at the performance this year of those top 5 candidates, François Fillon from the Les Républicains, 20% we have in our latest figures. Those are the figures that give him, of course, third place behind Emmanuel Macron and behind Marine Le Pen as well. Going back to 2007, we can see the figures for the Les Républicains candidate Nicolas Sarkozy were significant.
Hello, guys. I'm going to have to go back to the Patriot J channel, Patriot J News channel, and do an update video. And I can't do both of them at the same time. I can't do the live stream at the same time. My live stream, unfortunately, is shut off down there. That's why I'm on PJ America. But if you want to catch my other, it's Patriot J News. And just come over there and see me over there. This is where I'll be doing my live stream. I'll turn the live stream on after I get finished with that, and I'll get it back going for you. Thank you very much, and God bless.